there's not really a one size fits all way to be a good leader or good manager, especially as a leader. I'm sure most people have experienced somebody who just panics when things go wrong or they fly off the handle if you make a mistake. And that makes people shrink and they're scared and they don't want to approach. The skills that make you great as an individual are not the same skills that make you great or even effective as a leader. It doesn't really take a lot to be a good leader. It comes down to just being a good human being.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to the Vibrant Soul Society, The Conversations. Our mission for the show is to help you to discover that you are greater than your thoughts. And today we have a very special guest with us talking about leadership. What is the mindset of a leader and how do they best lead their organizations? So I'm very honored to welcome to the conversations, Erica.
Thank you.
Yes, so for those that are unfamiliar with you, who is Erica?
So, first and foremost, I'm a wife. I just had our 8-year wedding anniversary about 2 weeks ago. My wife and I are really big into animal rescue, and we have 9 pets. We've got 4 dogs and 5 cats currently. I am also an entrepreneur, started a business in 2024. I'm an ex corporate leader. I did corporate for about almost 20 years. And in general, I am probably a spiritual work in progress and just a human work in progress, just figuring things out and learning as I go.
Right, and learning as you go. That's really important to keep developing, to keep progressing forward. And
Yes.
just to touch back a little bit, this animal rescue, I think it was on your Instagram. I saw a goat in your truck. Is that what I saw?
Yes, you did see a goat in the back of our car. So that was actually, we were bringing a goat to our house to eat the poison ivy. I'm really sensitive to poison ivy and it like spreads wildly on me. And our dogs were running in the backyard and bringing it in and bringing it on me. So we got a goat from a friend of ours to eat the poison ivy in our backyard. So yes, we
Yeah,
were driving around with a goat for a couple days.
yeah, I didn't quite understand it, but I thought it was interesting. So it makes sense with the animal rescue. So that's very interesting doing the animal rescue, but I also saw that you were in the corporate space for 20 years and you
I was.
transitioned to creating your own business, this Authentic Foundation, which I think is a real interesting name.
Yes. So authenticity is something that I've been talking about and really believing in for years. It's something that for me, it's just been important to be myself and to bring my best self to every situation. So when you meet me, whether it's in a work setting or outside of work or just as friends, you get the same Erica. So when I created Authentic Foundations, the goal for me is to really help new managers to develop their skills and their fundamentals, but in a way that's authentic to them, because there's not really a one size fits all way to be a good leader or good manager. So there are some basic fundamentals that you can learn, but you can also tailor them to meet your style. So that's something that's comfortable and natural for you because it's going to be more genuine than feeling like you have to fit yourself into this predetermined box. So building your foundations, but doing it authentically.
I just was reading a little bit about your bio and stuff. To be a good leader, define the authentic foundation. Do you go through what kind of practices? Any like spiritual practices like meditation, anything of that nature that you're bringing into this foundation?
Yeah, so not so much for the people that would go through it. For me personally, yes, it's something that I do. It's something I've kind of gotten into over the past couple of years to center myself and to get myself clear, but I don't actually use that for anybody that's going through any of the coaching or online courses.
Okay, because I was just wondering about that because if your mind's really busy and chaotic, can you really find that authentic foundation?
That's true. It's a good point. So one thing I do talk about early on in some of the courses, the very first module is emotional intelligence. And one of the things to help with self-regulation is to, I mentioned doing that. So meditating, journaling, maybe it's listening to music, it's exercise, but it's a way for you to calm down, to get the energy and the thoughts out of the way so that you can really connect and say, okay, like now from a clear space, how do I want to tackle that? Because you can't, especially as a leader, I'm sure most people have experienced somebody who just panics when things go wrong or they fly off the handle if you make a mistake. And that makes people shrink and they're scared and they don't want to approach, they don't want to make mistakes. So having that emotional intelligence and like you mentioned, like the mindfulness and meditation, being able to say, okay, right now my immediate reaction is I'm frustrated. But if I wait a couple seconds, okay, what do we need to do from here? Like, what are the next steps that we take? And you can handle it in a much more controlled and respectful way. But that also helps folks to feel more confident and comfortable with you because it builds trust, it builds vulnerability, and it builds safety. It's psychological safety.
Right. So you do have those steps and so you're not
Yes.
so much in the noise, the chaos and all of this. So it's really interesting, talking about like leaders that fly off the handle and get really upset and bent out of shape. And I've been in the corporate space too, and you're wondering like, why are they in leadership? So what are some of the good signs of a good leader?
Typically when you see people who are promoted like that, it's because they probably were a really great performer. And so that's something that I've noticed a lot is if you're a really good, individual contributor, you might get promoted to that manager spot, but then they don't train you on how to be the manager because the skills that make you great as an individual are not the same skills that make you great or even effective as a leader. So typically, to be a good leader, it's communication skills. What seems really simple and it seems super obvious, but it's not. And that always kind of blows my little mind is that it doesn't really take a lot to be a good leader. It comes down to just being a good human being. And I like truly believe that it's just how would I want somebody to treat me in this situation? If I were the one that just messed up, how would I want my manager to respond? And it's with, you know what, I know that you did the best that you could. It didn't work out. What did we learn from this? How do we fix it versus yelling? So typically it's good communication skills, it's that emotional intelligence, it's being able to handle conflict and give people opportunities and really focusing more on others than on self. And that's something that's a shift for new managers as well, is that if you were the strong performer, it was all about what you could do and how you could do it. And now as a manager, it's nothing to do with you. It's now how do I motivate you to do your best? So being able and wanting to focus on other people's growth and development is one of the core pieces that you need to have. Because if you're in it just for yourself, you're not going to make a great manager.
Yeah, you brought up some really good points there that you're a great performer. So they think
Mhm.
you can be the leader, but there's the really opposite sides of the spectrum.
Yes.
Especially because you run into these people's like, well, I used to do it this way and I got these kind of results.
Yes. And that's exactly what it is. And that's something that you are good at performing, but you're not good at motivating and encouraging and supporting other people to do it. It's a whole different shift that people need to learn. And typically management doesn't teach you that. They don't take the time because of budget constraints and time constraints. We don't have the time or money to invest in it. So just learn on the job. But you're learning from people who learned from other people who were doing it all this outdated way. And we're just rolling it down the hill and teaching all these people all the wrong ways to be leaders.
I really like that. And we see that in life too. It's like generational trauma coming,
Yes.
it's like rolling downhill. And it's like, it's not changing the organization, it's not making the organization better. It could be maybe even a toxic environment passed
Yes.
down.
But it's how we've always done it. So why would we change it? It's worked so far. Why change now? And that's kind of the mindset that I'm trying to combat is that, yeah, you might have gotten to this point doing what you're doing, but you might be able to get to this point if you try something different. So it's the mindset of being continuously growing and learning, like you mentioned early on.
Right. Because they might be getting like a 5% or 10% growth a year and they're happy with that. But are you seeing results if they're really trained in the proper leadership or they can really go beyond typical results?
What is possible if you give them other tools and resources?
A new way to do things. Because
Mhm.
especially if they're the great performers for EQ for leading others is probably very low.
Typically, yes, unfortunately. And I think too, one of the things that comes up is that when you are hiring maybe externally, so this is if you're hiring somebody who's already on the team, they're already crushing it, and you say, you know what, Joe, you're doing a really great job. You're now the manager. And so Joe has to figure it out, but he knows the culture, he knows the team. So he has a good kind of leg up there. But if you hire somebody externally and bring them in, they're typically bringing in a leader who is going to get results because we obviously have an open position and here are the targets we're trying to achieve. And we want someone who's going to help us get to those targets. And typically, how they lead and how they manage is not the top priority for what you're looking for in an external candidate. You want somebody who is going to bring the results that you want. And typically, the results are not necessarily the emotional intelligence pieces, that really drive the team. It's more about ROI and budget. What's going to bring us money and success, not so much what's going to make us feel good and want to work harder.
Right. Because I think if you're enjoying your job, you're going to be more productive.
Oh, for sure.
Right. And people,
Yeah.
they don't understand that. You get somebody, a leader that's a little bit toxic or a little bit rough that really pushes people away. That's going to really affect productivity. And you're not going to enjoy that. And there might be a lot of high turnover in the company suddenly.
Oh, yes, it's for sure. If people like you as a manager, they tend to want to stay because if they're happy doing what they're doing. They feel like the team is culturally safe, psychologically safe, so they're able to be themselves, they're able to try new things. They're feeling engaged and the morale is up, like they want to be there. But if you have a toxic environment or you're just maybe not engaged at all with your team, it's just a job. This is now just a means to an end to make money. I come in, I do the bare minimum to not get yelled at or fired, and I go home. And maybe during the day, if I got caught up in my work, I might spend some time looking for another job on the side because when my work's done, by caring about the people, it's likely that they're going to want to stick around longer and stay either with you on that team or progress within that organization.
Yeah, because we are seeing quite a bit of high turnover within company. You can see them on LinkedIn. As
Yeah.
the average age of employee, you can see for some companies is very low.
Yes. It's been bad. I think, during COVID, that was a challenge in general. A lot of people lost their roles around that time period. And then after the pandemic ended and we started going back to work, people had gotten so used to being able to work from home. And now we're telling them, okay, we're going to start to do a little hybrid and it's a little bit more in the office, but you can still work from home. And then it's really moving back almost to return to office where getting to work from home is not the norm. It's like this exception that you might get, and it's still a maybe. And so people are leaving these roles because, this is how they have built the last several years. And they're finding a really good pattern. They're finding that they're productive and that they're successful. And now you're telling me I have to go back, and that's 2 extra hours of a commute. And, now I don't have childcare because I don't get home in time to pick them up. And so now I've got to figure that out. And, we're not really focusing on the needs of the people. So as long as they're meeting their expectations, like I don't understand why we're forcing people to go back. And so people are leaving and demanding almost what they're looking for, which is more flexibility and more, recognition that they're human beings who have lives outside of the corporate 9 to 5 space.
Have you seen any studies on productivity versus the remote, the hybrid, and the in-person? Is there any difference in productivity?
So I believe, and I don't have like stats or anything on hand, the majority has proven that most people are still just as productive at home, if not more productive. But I think I've seen some articles too that say like people are not everybody is meant to work from home. So some people, for me personally, I do fantastically at home. I work and I get my head down. And unfortunately, this is not good, for work best practices, but I barely leave my desk. But you should take breaks and do those things that I don't do. But some people are not. They're playing video games and then they come back and check in. And so there's some people that you really do, I don't want to say micromanage, but you need to see them in a more controlled environment because you might have to keep an extra eye on them. And some people do exceptionally well from home. And so I think that it's it's not so much just a blanket statement. It's more about an individual case. Like, can you be trusted to work from home? Yes, great. Then go ahead and do that if that's what you want. Can you be? You cannot be. So like that's something that you can work up to and we can try again, but not right now. So that's my take on that.
Well, that sounds like some tough decisions for leadership to handle. I don't like your productivity when you work from home.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, but I think there are some ways to make it fair because it's not just, I don't really like you. You don't get to, so it's not a personal thing, but it's like, look at expectations. Here's what I need from you. And when you were working from home, we're not meeting those expectations. And so now, if I bring you into the office and you're still not meeting expectations, it might be because we need to do a performance, do some coaching, counseling, some training, and maybe a performance improvement plan. But if you come back to the office and you're doing really well, then it might be because you just don't have the discipline to work from home without, slacking off. So I think that's kind of where you can make it so it's not personal and it's not difficult. It's now just performance based. I need you as a manager to meet these goals. You're not doing that. What do we need to do to get you there? Maybe it's being back in the office.
Right. Yeah. Making those tough choices. And maybe that's not the right job for them. And maybe they do need that discipline.
Possibly.
Do you also sometimes work with the employees as well to help them with their productivity?
Right now, as a business, I'm primarily focusing more on the individuals. But what I'd love to do long term is to work with like an L&D team or an HR team to use some of the courses that I have and put that into an onboarding program for new managers.
Okay. So yeah, the long-term goal is going to corporations and work at the HR, the recruiting department, and
Mm.
still the teachings from there and then out through the organization.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just as simple as things we can do for the employees, the leadership is just that first exercise of just learning to take a breath, to get focused and let go of all this chaos and craziness.
Yes. Actually, I posted something on LinkedIn, I think maybe in the last week, that was, we're teaching employees mindfulness, take meditation, do self-care, go for a walk. But why are we not teaching managers? At the same time, managers are doing stretch goals, really tight timelines and pushing people super fast. Like, why are we not teaching managers how to create an environment where self-care isn't something that we're asking people to do to just manage their day to day? So we're putting the onus on the employee to figure out ways to deal with the culture that they're working in, but we're not spending time working with management to say, whoa, 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 like what we're doing and how we're going about it is too much. Like we need to dial it back a little bit, or we're going to burn out our employees. And so, like, why is the mindset more on teaching employees how to cope with these bad environments versus creating better environments?
Well, you mentioned a very interesting word there. I think it's very important to dive in, burnout, uphill
Yeah.
burning. What are some of the things that we can do to touch on that burnout that a lot of individuals are dealing with?
I think one is setting boundaries. And this is something that's hard for a lot of people in their personal lives, but also professionally, is to say, like, look, I'm not going to check my email outside of work hours. So if it's an emergency and you really need me to do it, call me. But if you send me an email or a Teams message, I'll see it tomorrow when I log in. So setting those boundaries and having those conversations with managers, they don't have to do this. But if I'm emailing them after hours, they're going to think, oh man, she's emailing me. Is she expecting a response? So you're setting a bad precedence for folks if you're not doing what you're telling them that you want them to do. Same thing for time off. If you're, take time off. You have it. Most companies offer, say, 2, 3 weeks of time off. Use it. Take some time. Don't check your email. Don't work on your days off. Like separate and breathe and recharge. But also as a manager, tell and encourage your people to do it. So show them like, hey, I'm taking this Friday off as a personal day just because just want to take a day to recharge. And so let them know that it's okay to do that. So there's little things that we can do as leaders to encourage and remind folks that, there are some ways that you can have a better work-life balance, but you have to do a little bit of work to set the parameters for that.
Yeah, it brings up a lot of interesting things. A lot of people are almost afraid to take vacation, like they're going to miss something important.
And it shouldn't be that way. It's sad to hear it. And I know one thing too is that people say, if I take a day off, or especially if I take a week off, I'm going to come back to so many emails and so much work that already on top of what I'm going to come into on a normal Monday, now I've got a backlog of that extra week. And so they're like, it's almost not worth taking time off because it's just going to be overwhelming when I return. And that's not good. Like we need to find some ways where if it's not an emergency or urgent, then, if they're on the email, I tried really hard not to email people when they were on PTO unless it was something that was just informational. Like when you come back, just brush up on this. But I tried not to email folks when they were out because I wanted to help them have that boundary. We need to find better ways to have backup plans for folks so they can take time and not stress out.
Right. And once again, with these really important topics for people to burn out, stress, being overwhelmed, I think it really is just learning to set boundaries and really honor yourself. That is so, so challenging for many people. So, how do they even just begin if that feels overwhelming to them?
How they begin having those conversations,
Yeah,
you just really have to just do it. There's not really a great way to coach you into that. Hopefully you have a decent relationship with your manager. And that's part of this. What I want to do is coach the managers to have rapport with their team so that they feel like they can have dialogue and communication. But if you don't have that currently, it's going to be more intimidating and scary to approach them. But I feel like being honest, but respectful and saying, look, right now I have 3 projects on my plate and you're asking me to take this other one on. I can take it on, but then one of these other projects, needs to take a back seat. So what is the priority of these? Or if possible, do you have somebody else who can take on the fourth one or somebody who can finish the one I'm doing here and I'll take this new one on? But have those conversations and set expectations for your managers because I know if you have a large team and you have a lot of projects happening, you don't always know exactly how busy somebody is. And what might seem like a really fast and quick project for you might take the employee twice as long to get done because they don't have the skills and experience that you have. They might not be aware of how tapped out you are. You have to have that conversation to say, look, I don't really have the bandwidth to take on something else right now. I'm struggling. And if I take on something else, I'll be at burnout. And if they have a problem with that, then, because maybe you don't have enough on your plate and you're just like, okay, we need to work on your bandwidth and your time management skills. But if you really do have enough on your plate, they're going to say, okay, you're right. I'll give this to somebody else because I don't want to ruin the projects that you're working on or burn you out. So hopefully they'll be respectful, but you just need to be honest and find a respectful way to approach it.
And that might be a little more challenging if that person was promoted because they were a great performer and now they're in leadership without the training. They're like, well, I did this. So it comes back to proper training of leadership once
It
again.
does. It's no longer about you, and so everybody's different. And so just because you went through it and experienced it and it was fine doesn't mean it's not something completely different for somebody else. So, okay, you might not be as adept at handling this type of project. How can I support you? Is what should be asked instead of like, how do I help you get it done? What parts are you having a hard time with? Is it the time management piece? Is it breaking it into manageable chunks? Do you not know who to talk to? Maybe what the resources are? So being available to offer support.
Yeah, really important steps too. So where does, let's say there's a new person in leadership. They were a great performer. They were just promoted. They discover you. How do you begin with them?
First thing I would do if they actually want coaching, I have an online assessment. It's not mine, but it's a different assessment where we can just get a baseline for where their emotional intelligence is. And that way we can say, here's where you're doing really well, and maybe here's where there's room for opportunity. But we could also just talk about what issues they want to focus on because they might say, look, I feel really good about giving feedback, but I'm not really good about managing performance and expectations. So how do I keep up with performance management? And then we can focus in on the areas where they want to focus. So we can kind of go one of two ways. So either starting with an assessment and then figure out where the gaps are. We could do kind of a week, have like a 7-week program almost for the different topics each week. Or you just come in and ad hoc and say, look, I'm just here because I need help with giving feedback to people because I avoid it. So we could do it any of those ways.
Right. So if there's new leaders out there, even established leaders, they should reach out to you, at least get that assessment and see where their blind spots are.
Yeah, and
This
there's
is,
also online courses. So if people don't want coaching up front, maybe they're just like, I want to dip my toe into it, but I'm not ready to dive in. There are some courses online. I also have some free resources where folks can look at those and see if that helps. And if they want to then look into coaching, we, could do it that way too.
yeah. So that sounds like you have some really great resources for leadership. So I just want to change direction a little bit here to go a little bit different way because I think this is another important avenue that isn't really talked about much is animal rescue. I know some people do animal rescue as well, but reading your intake form, you take it a step further. You're actually learning animal communication.
A
What's
little bit.
it's about?
So a few years ago, I met a woman on LinkedIn who connected with me because I had posted something about, I think, one of my pets, and she was an animal lover. And so we connected, and I saw her profile that she talks to animals. And I thought, oh my gosh, how cool is that? But then I also thought, that sounds like a scam because, you know, what is that? Like Dr. Dolittle kind of thing. And so I had her do a reading with one of my pets. And I was so blown away by how accurate it was and what she was able to share that I had not told her about myself or our pets. And we ended up having her do readings for every single pet that we have. And then we still meet with her as we bring somebody new into the family. So I started looking into how to connect with animals. Basically, it's energetically and telepathically, but just kind of communicating through thoughts and feelings with animals. So that's something I'm practicing. I'm not a super adept at it yet, but it's definitely something that I want to become better at.
Yeah, it's really interesting aspect that it's all an aspect of consciousness that we are, outside the body, we are just consciousness and they are
Yes.
consciousness as well. And I'm sure the readings, I'm sure every animal, because when I had animals in the past, they all have specific traits. They have their own personalities. So
Yes.
she's probably picking up on this and it was telling you, well, this one likes to do this, this, and the other thing, and this is their habits, and this one likes this and this.
Oh, so spot on. And then we have special needs pets. We'll just say that we've got some that have some really bad histories and whatnot, and some that have actual like they're blind or special needs. And so a couple of them are really scared of other people, just humans, and so they hide like and fearfully. So when she connected, she said, "I'm really having a hard time even getting to talk to them. Like it was, they felt really guarded, and I was just getting like small snippets." And I'm like, that's spot on. That's him because he doesn't, he is so backward and afraid of people. So he talked a little bit, but he was still very wary, even spiritually. So it was freakish how spot on she was with it, and I thought it was absolutely incredible and just loved it. Because who doesn't want to talk to their animals and hear what they have to say?
Absolutely, because they are a reflection of consciousness that can't speak in English, but
Mhm.
they can still communicate in other ways.
And they try so hard to talk to us. Actually, the reason why I started to learn it was because she's now my friend, but my friend, when she talked to one of my dogs, told her, please teach my mom how to do this because she really wanted to talk to me. I guess she had been trying so hard to communicate with me, and I just was oblivious and missing all the signs. And so I started to practice because she had asked me to. And so I feel like I connect very well with her now, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yes. So, do you offer any people any into that area, animal communications, or are you just focusing on leadership?
Just leadership. So I'm not, I wish I were, but I'm not at a place where I could teach anybody else animal communication yet. I'm happy to point people in the direction of other folks who are professionals, but I definitely don't include it.
Yeah, because I think it would be very helpful because if your animals are misbehaving, you could understand like why they're doing this behavior and how to correct it and make the
Hmm.
relationship so much stronger.
One thing I learned that I thought was fantastically fascinating is that animals mirror us. So if your animal starts to have certain symptoms sometimes, it's because you have symptoms. Like maybe and you're not really realizing it, but maybe you have like some back issue. You'll start to notice that like, your cat needs to go to the vet for a back issue. So they start to take on energy from us and they start to replicate some of the things that we have. It's just they mirror us. And I think that's fascinating because they are so much smarter than we are. They're in the moment, they're present, they're so connected to their higher selves and their purpose, but they want so badly to take this other stuff from us. And they can feel when we're, distracted and whatever, they want to help us all the time. So there's just so much that just blows my mind when I think about it.
They really are very supportive. We see these service dogs that are out, they are supportive. They're really uplifting to individuals that need that are lonely, needing some
Yes.
companionship. Yeah, for
Actually, one of my heart dog, I've had him, I had him for about 10 years. He just passed away this past August. But I got him after a divorce and after, just a lot of things had happened. And I was in a really bad headspace and I, I didn't want to live anymore. I'll just say that. And so I got a dog because I wanted a reason to live. And I was like, if I know nothing else needs me, I don't have a purpose here. So if I get a dog, like I feel like I have to stay. And he saved my life and he was fantastic. And he really helped me to come out of my darkness and really helped me to just see beauty in so many things and people. And when he talked to my friend, he said like that was my purpose. I was meant to be here for you during that time to show you unconditional love. When he passed, I was so devastated, but I attribute so much of my current life and where I'm at and the peace that I have because of him. I don't think I would have made it had he not been around. And I am just very, very grateful to him for that.
Yeah, a very fascinating conversations. I'm sure all of these skills can be incorporated in everyday life, this emotional intelligence.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the thing. It's not necessarily just for leaders. So when I talk about it's communication, it's being able to recognize your emotions and how to manage them, but also how to recognize them in other people. It's your social skills. and how to communicate with people who might be very different from you. So it's stuff that I have used in my marriage to, sometimes we're very different. So sometimes I go at something one way and she'll go a different way. And I have to get myself say, okay, like, how is she, where is she coming from? And okay, I understand it a little bit better now. There's skills that you can use anywhere and everywhere. And I think just right now, it feels like the world could really use some more empathy across the board, which is a little bit more tolerance, a little bit more kindness. So it's something that I'm really passionate about and want to spread some more positivity. Like you mentioned too about bleeding into families. When you have a toxic leader, if you have a bad manager, that can really one crush the success of the business, but you can really do some damage to an individual person because that can really crush their spirit. And, your manager has a huge impact on your mental health and your overall health because it's all tied together. But then you bring that home to your spouse or your kids or your friends or your pets, and it all ties together. It's just one big circle. We're all so interconnected and interrelated. And I don't think people think about that sometimes. And so that's why for me, empathy is like, look, at the end of the day, we're all humans and we're all trying and we're all doing. Let's just be kind to each other.
Yeah, really being kind. That's a good point that we're spending for sometimes during the week, we're spending more time at work than at home. We
For
don't really want
sure.
to bring that mindset from work back into home if it's toxic.
And it's hard to separate though. I mean, I don't know. Well, I know a few people who are able to like, done. I'm at home now and like, okay, back to work mode. But most people can't. And so it bleeds into home. And so you might, nothing's wrong at home, but suddenly you're just really short tempered and you're a little bit more snarky about some things. And then it starts to, start bickering at, and it comes out of nowhere. Or you take it to work. Maybe you had a rough night at home and then you go in and you yell at an employee or a coworker and you're really short with somebody because we can't really shut it off. It does bleed. And that's why it's important to just be human in all of these different facets.
Right. But
Hmm.
you can't silo yourself. It's all one big soup, and you just have to really have the emotional intelligence to ground, to center, to take a pause, then
Hmm.
find this way forward.
And sometimes being vulnerable and say, look, today I'm not on my A game. We have some family health, issues right now that we're dealing with, and I'm a little tired. And that way you go into work and your team knows, okay, we'll try not to bother you unless we really need something. Or if might be a little bit more direct with something, it's not personal because I know it's not about me. It's just you've got some stuff going on. How can I support you? Or is there anything that you need? And just that little bit of empathy too of just, hey, I know you've got a lot going on. Do you want me to bring you some lunch? Would you, is there anything that I can do for you? Whether it's coming to or from the manager, it goes a long way. But just being vulnerable and saying, look, I also have some stuff going on and I'm a little distracted today. I'm sorry. I didn't hear what you said. Can you repeat that? And that just shows like, okay, we're all doing the best we can.
Right, really. And that's a big issue for a lot of people that they are taking it personally, even though it's not
Oh, for
personal per se.
sure.
They're taking it personally because they're not living in your world. They don't know what's going on. You don't know what's going on with the other person. So
Hmm.
we start to butt heads a little bit because we didn't take this pause and time out and take a breath and say, okay, let me separate these energies and focus on this person in front of me.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's hard not to, I do it too. If somebody gets, a little snippy with me, I'm like, why? What did I do? But then sometimes it's generally not about you. But that's where you can say, hey, you seemed a little bit short. Is everything okay? Or, and they might be like, yeah, I'm so sorry. It's not you. And if it is you, they might come out and say it like, yeah, look, we need to talk about some stuff. Okay, great. Let's air it instead of just holding it in and snapping at each other. Let's talk about it. Or like, okay, it's not you. It's not me. I got it, but just have that conversation. So that's where that leading with empathy creates a culture where folks can ask those questions and can have that conversation with you and say, look, you just seem a little bit off. Like, is everything all right? Are we good? And yes, let's figure out from here what we need to do next.
Yeah, that's such a key point to let's talk about it. And once again, it's about being, open and honest with that person, that authentic foundation, once again, of just
Yeah.
speaking your truth and saying, okay, let's talk about it. And it's not personal, let's have an open communication.
And I statements and say, look, when you said that, I took it personally. Like, was that meant for me? Or, I was a little thrown off when you responded that way. Should I be, Did I do something wrong? And so it's just a way to put it out there so that you don't let it fester. And then, because then it starts to get in your head, and then you start to act a little bit sideways with somebody else. And then they're like, well, why are they being weird with me? And it just spreads. So just nip it in the bud. Let's figure it out and just hash it out up front.
Wow, some great wisdom from you, Erica. I really appreciate
Thanks.
this. So if people had questions for you, how would they reach out to you?
Sure. The fastest way is through email. It's authentic.foundationsetb@gmail.com. And that's Erica Taylor Beck. So that's what the ETB is. I also have all of my stuff on Podia right now. So it's authenticfoundations.podia, Podia.com. And so that's where you can find courses and freebies and coaching and any other information that you might need.
Okay, great. So I encourage people to reach out. If you're a new employee, you're in leadership, I think this can help everyone to manage work better so you're not bringing it home and you're able to isolate and keep yourself grounded and centered. This is such a good conversation. So thank you once again for joining us on the conversations.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to talk to you about this.